About a year later in 2020, I did another survey, and this one I actually think is a better survey and probably more along the lines of what I would recommend. I started a secret project related to this newsletter and could use your help. If you've got 30 seconds to spare, I'd love to hear your thoughts on these three questions. So I'm creating a curiosity gap to get them to at least click because they're like, "Oh, what's he up to?" At the time, this secret project was me redesigning the branding for my newsletter. But if I would have said, "Hey, I'm coming up with a new logo and I'd love to hear your thoughts," what do they care? I kept that sort of secret. So when they click that link, again, three questions, you'll notice you can see the difference between this survey and the first one in my own sort of evolution of how I did this. Three questions instead of five questions. And this, all three questions are open ended. I think you, for the most part, get more valuable answers. So these questions or a version of them, I think, are really helpful for you to understand how people are seeing your newsletter. In one word, how does For the Interested make you feel when you read it? This is a great question because it's very, as you'll see when you see the responses, you can learn a lot by what words people pick and what words multiple people pick. In one sentence, what are your favorite For the Interested articles about? And then what's your favorite newsletter other than For the Interested? So this question is designed to both give me a sense of who my audience is. If I want to do cross promotions or marketing or any of that stuff, it gives me a sense of what else they're reading and sort of helps me gauge who am I actually attracting. So the responses to this were very interesting. This was the list of one words. And I went through and I have somewhere else in the document, I added up like how many people said what. But what's interesting is when people can pick any word they want, these were not multiple choice, and yet you start to see the same words over and over again. Curious, informed. There's another informed. Inspired came up multiple times. I think inspired and inspiration was, I think, one of the top words, which was interesting because I never really talked about the inspiration piece of it. Interested, overwhelmed. I think multiple people said overwhelmed, which is really interesting considering they, and again, led to me continuing to shrink my newsletter. In one sentence, what are your favorite articles about? So again, this can sort of help you creativity. You're looking for the patterns, right? You're looking for the patterns of what are multiple people saying. Creativity, unlocking creativity, creativity. So that kind of thing. And then what's your favorite newsletter other than For the Interested? It was interesting because a lot of these newsletters I knew, some of them I didn't know. So that was also would tip me off to stuff. The other thing about this one to keep in mind, though, is obviously the bigger the newsletter, the more people in general subscribe to it. So the more likely it makes sense that more people are going to say James Clear's newsletter than some small newsletter, just because James Clear has a bigger audience. So you want to take this with a grain of salt. But these three questions, if you're going to do a survey, I personally have found very helpful and they're very simple.